Hey, Miss W here. I'm going to talk about completing the square for this assignment. I showed you the video. Hopefully you took notes. I'm going to take the video to do actual Deltamath problems now. So for the completing the square, this assignment here, you want to make sure that this first starts out, no, it doesn't matter. I take that back. You don't have to make sure it's in standard form, but if you watch the video, you know that you take your first two terms, your one that is squared and the variable that is just an exponent of 1. And you're going to put it in a parenthesis. So I'm going to take x squared plus 6x plus a blank. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to bring my 16 down, but I'm going to plus a blank. So this is where I'm going to make my perfect square trinomial. And we talked about those, I think, last week. So to get your constant, we just did that assignment, you take half of your b. So half of 6 is 3, and then you square it, so 9. So 9 is the number that you would add to both sides. So half of b, square it, that's 9. Now the reason that you did that was so you can factor this trinomial like this. You take one of the x's or one of the variables, whatever letter it is, whatever this sign is, you bring it down, and then half of your b, which is 3, or the square root of 9, however you remember, it's the same number. So this trinomial factors to x plus 3 squared equals 16 plus 9, 17, 25. Okay. So we've got that far. Now the next step is to get rid of our square here. And we take the square root to do that of both sides. When you take the square root of a square, they cancel out and you're left with a radicand, x plus 3, equals, don't forget your plus or minus here. The square root of 25 is 5. We're almost done now. We need x by itself, so we're going to subtract 3. Remember, whatever you subtract is going to go in front of your plus or minus. So now on this side I have an x equals, and on the right side I've got a negative 3 plus or minus 5. So I've got a negative 3 plus 5, and that would equal a 2. And I've got a negative 3 minus 5, which would be a negative 8. So in curly brackets you would come over here and you would type in this case, negative 8, comma 2, and your curly brackets. Remember, use the plus to get the curly brackets or hit your comma key and it'll do. So we did not need, in this case, to use my plus or minus here or my radical because we had perfect numbers. So let's do another example. Okay, so the first step is to put these two terms in parentheses. And then you're going to add a blank. Always you're going to add, so I'm going to add a blank. And then what I do to one side, you have to do to the other, so I'm going to add a blank. Now, I need to figure out what number I'm going to add here. So to do that, I take half of my b, so half of 4, which is 2. 2 squared is 4, so I'm going to add a 4 to both sides. I did that because I want to factor this perfect square trinomial I just created. And it's always going to be something squared, a quantity squared. So you take one of the x's, in this case x squared, you take one of those, whatever sign that is, so it's a plus, and half your b, which is a 2, or square root of 4, which is a 2, whichever way you want to remember it, equals 36. To get rid of the square, we take the square root of both sides, so we end up with x plus 2 equals plus or minus 6. Okay, then if you remember, then we take a minus 2, we want to put it in front of our plus or minus, so I end up with x equals negative 2 plus or minus 6. So I have negative 2 plus 6, which is 4, and I have negative 2 minus 6, which is negative 8. So in curly brackets, I would put a 4, comma, negative 8, or a negative 8, comma 4, and submit. So these first sections are all going to be whole numbers. You're going to have a couple harder ones, like only two more problems where they do the radical, and I'll show you that next. All right, this last one, I'm going to probably have a square root in my answer, so let's figure out what we're doing here. Taking my first two terms, and I'm going to start a parenthesis with them. X squared plus 14x plus something. So that didn't change. So I've got a 30 outside, or I can bring my 30 over. We'll do that in a moment. Equals 0 plus something. Okay. What is that something? What are you going to take half of? What number? Hopefully you said 14. So that's 7. What do you do with that number? Hopefully you said square. So 49 is going to be added to both sides. You did that, so you can take this and you can factor it into x, this is a plus, plus something squared. What is the square root of 49? 7. I've still got my plus 30 on this side, and 0 plus 49 is 49. Okay, so I need to get this by this squared term by itself, so I'm going to minus 30 from both sides. So now I've got x plus 7 squared equals, let's see, 19. Okay. How do you get rid of a square? You take the square root. What you do to one side, you do to the other. When you square root a square, you're in with the radicand. So x plus 7 equals, don't forget your plus or minus. Radical 19 will not simplify, so I'm just leave it radical 19. And then the last step is to bring over your 7. Remember, your 7 goes in front of your plus or minus. So you have x equals plus or minus, whoops, forgot the term, my minus 7 plus or minus radical 19. So I would type in the curly bracket, -7. I would click this plus or minus right here, and boom, it would go up there. Then I would hit that square root, and boom, like my boom, my sound effects, it goes right there. And then 19, and end your curly bracket. So I believe that will take your answer like that. Let me know if you have questions.